the night before the lawsuit dropped in late April of 22. I wanted all my kids to understand what was about to come. My son looked at me and said, "Mom, it's about time you stood up for yourself." I will never forget that moment, and my jaw dropped, and I cried harder because I realized that no matter what happened, I knew that even if I lost, that I won. Because my kids, this is where my kids saw that I stood up.
A-list guests just continue to happen one after the other. Today we got Sage Steele, extraordinarily esteemed sports journalist with ESPN for 16 years. Maybe opened her mouth and said a few things that we're going to find out if she regretted it or not, about Obama, about Leah Thomas, about the vaccine, and she's here to share her story. Thank you so much, Sage. Thanks for being on. We really appreciate you spending time with us today.
Yes. I'm excited. I feel like we have a lot in common.
Oh, you and Layla have a lot in common because you spoke up. You know, I do want to caveat, I really, really, really want this episode to be on YouTube. So we have to be a little careful with our words, especially because I know you had a lot of thoughts.
We have to censor, erase?
I have to censor and erase. I have to. We've already have one strike on a previous guest, and their robots saw the episode and told us exactly the offending content, and we chopped it, and it was basically doing massive biopsy on our episode. It was reduced down to like a 40-minute episode. Yeah,
I mean, that's the problem. It's like, well, I'm not saying anything offensive. I don't really use bad language, but it's the truth. What do you want? And it's so hard to figure out that it's very subjective, and they have that power. So I'll behave as much as I'm just listening to the truth. That's all I can do.
I know. Speak your truth, and I know that's what we all want.
We actually have a show called The Layla Show, and I'm only on Rumble because there's nothing in my shows that will be allowed on YouTube, so I'm not even trying.
Yeah.
I'm not even trying.
So I am with you. And since I have my own show as well, I get it. It's a fine line.
So take us, just give for those who aren't aware of you so much, give us a little background on your career and how far along you got and what led you to get maybe some negative attention.
Okay, that's like 6 questions in one, David. So
Go for it.
No. Okay, the journalist in me is like, no, wait, which one do you want me to start with, like the cancel part or the career part?
Let's start with your career.
Yeah.
Talk about your career. Yes.
I know, because there's so much, like they're completely different lives almost. It's crazy. You said at ESPN, 16 and a half years. That was the most recent I guess, official job I had, corporate America type. But many years, that was always my goal. That was always my dream, to end up at ESPN hosting SportsCenter. And that's what I did in 2007. After 11 years of local TV and regional TV. So, I mean, it was really an honor and I'm still so humbled to have had this dream since I was 11 years old and like announced it to my parents at the dinner table that I wanted to be a sportscaster and talk about athletes and coaches and their stories and what makes them great, because I really and truly still believe that sports is the great connector. It brings us together. It no matter your skin color, your politics, gender, race, whatever, like for those 3 hours on a football Sunday or a basketball game or our kids' little league softball game, like we're all on the same team, you know? And that's why I felt that at a very young age and I wanted to be part of that. So that's where the dream began in 1983, 84 when I was 11. And then went to Indiana University and graduated. It took 5 years to do that. So it is what it is. The longest plan possible that my parents would pay for. And then local TV, South Bend, Indiana, and then Indianapolis, and then Tampa, Florida, and then regional in the Central Florida area, and then up to DC for 6 years. I had all 3 of my kids when I lived in DC. So they're now 23, 21, and 19. The oldest just graduated college, and she's here in Nashville where I am part-time, and just started her job like yesterday, literally. So my whole hashtag, you want that, get a job. Well, she has a job, and I'm so proud of her. She just graduated in May. And then the other 2 are going to be a senior and sophomore in college. So really full circle, but that dream of ESPN even though it didn't end the way I thought or wanted, I wouldn't change a thing, especially those 16 years at the worldwide leader.
So tell us what happened that got you into a little bit of hot water.
I went on a podcast and said too much, apparently. But listen, it was a different time. This was September of 2021. And so much of the world, isn't it amazing how much it's changed when you look back of how insane it was then? It's insane now in different ways, but just the rules and the regulations and the judgment, the cancellations, everybody being okay with that and almost encouraging it. It makes me so sad that we were there. I must say, I should have prefaced the entire conversation with this, but I don't know. I'm okay with all of it because, I mean, for me, I can't speak for others, because my faith has never been stronger. It has grown tremendously over the last 5 years. Personally as well, I was divorced in 2019 after 20 years of marriage, 27 years together. That's all I ever knew. So between that and the professional stuff, I don't know. I feel stronger than ever, even though it's been as chaotic as ever. So in that time, in September 21, I worked for ESPN, owned by Disney, FYI, if people don't know that. And in order to keep my job, I was required to get the vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine, and I thought it was wrong. But I did it because I needed to keep my job. And I have really struggled with that decision because I feel like I caved in, and I did. But, I had 3 college-age kids and paying for everything by myself. So what do you do? I am one of millions of people who had to make that decision. So no sympathy for me here. It's just explaining why I made that decision for me. And I'll never forget it. I mean, I was sobbing as I drove to that appointment to get the shot. And I got the solo shot. Was that Pfizer? I don't remember. They're all the same and evil if you ask me. But I got the solo shot because I was like, let me just do one, like as little as possible, and praying that I would have a fake shot go through my veins. It would just be water. Like that was what I was visualizing because I prayed about it ahead of time. And I'll tell you this, that day, which was exactly 2 weeks prior to the deadline that I had to be fully vaccinated. So mid-September, September 30th, 2021 was the day I had to be completely vaccinated. And I sat in the parking lot and cried as I debated, should I go in or should I get fired? And then I did it. I went in and I sat down, and the sweet lady who was administering the shot looked at me, said, "Are you okay?" My eyes were all red. I was like, "No, I'm not." And I told her, "I'm being forced to do this to keep my job, and I'm devastated." And she looked at me. She said, "That is so wrong, and I am so sad."
I wish you would have just scored it in the air, and written that you took the shot, something like that. That would have been pretty cool.
I mean, she had a job to keep too. That's the problem, is everybody had these fears and there's cameras everywhere. Everybody was doing what they could to survive. Others abused that, certainly. But in that moment, her words meant a lot to me. And she grabbed my hand and she held it, and then she put it in. And at that moment, I still get choked up when I think about it because something changed in me at that moment. And I'm still pissed off about it. But that was part of my journey, apparently. I'm still standing. And I got in my car and cussed myself out the whole way home, like, "You fell out, you loser, you caved." But I just kept praying. I did pray before that, the night before and the morning of, for a sign from God. Like, okay, what should I do? Because if I need to walk away, then I will, and I'll figure it out financially. I don't know, figure it out. And I got enough signs. I won't bore you with now. I got enough that told me that I was going to be okay and to do it. So drove home and had this previously scheduled podcast with Jay Cutler, the former NFL quarterback. It was like his 3rd or 4th show, and I knew his publicist who asked me to do them a favor because they hadn't had a woman on yet. And, "Hey, you're a sportscaster." "Okay, sure, I'll do it." And I swear to you, I raced home from the pharmacy, and it was early September, mid-September, so it was still warm in Connecticut at the time. Connecticut, for those of you who don't know, is where ESPN World Headquarters in Bristol, Connecticut. Lovely Bristol, Connecticut. And so I had the sleeveless shirt on, and I had a Band-Aid where she put it in, and I wasn't even thinking about it. And I sat down, and he's like, we're getting ready to start. And I was like, I'm sorry, I was late, and I put up my laptop, and he's like, can I ask you about that? And I was like, sure, I don't care. I just have to take the shot, like whatever. And then an hour later, when he asked me, he's like, so what's that Band-Aid? And I kind of looked at him. I was like, I forgot you were going to ask me that. And I just explained what happened. I didn't explain nearly as much as I've explained to you. I said, listen, in order to keep my job, I had to get the COVID-19 vaccine. And I took a deep breath. I remember I looked out the window and I said, I think it's sick and scary that any company can force their employees to do something to their body. But I have a job that I need and a job that I absolutely love. And that was the decision I made about an hour and a half ago. And here we are.
Wow.
That's what I said. And about as soon as the podcast dropped, about 2 weeks later, my phone started ringing. First was my agent.
Right away?
Immediately. My agent saying, so what exactly did you say? Because I'm getting a call from your bosses. And then the bosses called. And that's when it all went crazy and I was suspended and pulled off the air and forced to apologize. And that was the beginning of the end. Yeah.
Unbelievable. So they force you to get the shot, and then they want to silence you from saying that you didn't want to get the shot.
But I got the shot and I complied. Exactly. There's so much irony and hypocrisy in that, right? At the time, I didn't even think like that. I didn't. I was just spinning and I was so scared. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I've never been grounded. I was such a nerdy, good teenager. And so I'm like, I've never been in trouble. I've never been fired from a job. Nothing bad had ever happened. I'm sorry, that's my espresso machine over there making a lot of noise. Always have one, right? So I just was like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'll fix it. And then my agent's like, if you don't apologize, then they're going to fire you. I'm like, what are you talking about? Apologize for what? Like, I complied with their rules to take the shot. God. I did what they wanted. Here we are. But I can have an opinion about it. And he said, you need to apologize. And then the boss called me and he explained more about that. He said, well, you whacked the company. Those were his words. You can't whack the company. You can't whack Disney, and this isn't going over well.
Wow.
And then the other comments that got me in trouble allegedly were about race and Obama. And Jay Cutler had asked me a good question about why it's important to me to say that I'm biracial. And it always has been important because I am. Breaking news. Like, I am proud of that. And I'm a white mom, Irish Italian mother, Black father, and I come from the most diverse family. Isn't that what we celebrate? Diversity?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so I remember in 2014, I was on The View, also owned by Disney, sisters with ESPN, ABC, and Barbara Walters. She was right here to my left, and Jenny McCarthy and Sherry Shepherd and Whoopi Goldberg were to my right. And they asked me, why is it so important to you to say biracial? Why can't you just say Black? And so, because I am. And so Barbara was very upset. Barbara Walters was very upset with for having this I don't know, opinion. Like, what do you call it? It's who I am. And so she's like, well, our president, 2014, Barack Obama, he's biracial too, but he says Black. And I was like, okay. And well, congratulations to the president. I mean, it's interesting to me because he was raised by his white mom and his white grandmother, and his Black dad was nowhere to be found.
Oh, wow.
But it's true. He wrote a book about it.
It's amazing. No, but it's true. And what's wrong with it?
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, if you're biracial,
what's wrong with it? Why are you 50% of your genetic makeup? Why would you want to ignore that?
And if you're biracial, you're forced to pick a side, and it always tends to be the Black side. It can't be the other side. It doesn't make any sense.
You're right. Well, you're appreciating both sides. You wouldn't have been here without both sides.
So that's what I said, Layla. I was so awkward. The whole thing was so awkward, and the audience was quiet, and Barbara was just like, scowling at me, and I'm like, this is Barbara Walters. I love her. Like, what is this? I mean, everybody was young compared to Barbara Walters at the time,
Still young.
I mean, I guess that, what was that, 14? So now 11 years ago. So I was like 42, 43. I don't know. No, 41. And so I was certainly younger and less confident. And I did say, I mean, I'm pretty sure my white mom was there the day I was born. So I feel like, and I tried to like make light of it, and I didn't even know that behind me, in the monitor behind me, they'd put up a picture of my family. So my mom and dad and my two brothers and myself. And so why is this a thing? And so whatever, we moved on, and like that was not a big deal in 2014. I repeated that story in 2021 on Jay's podcast. Wow. The exact story that I said live on ABC 7 years prior. When I repeated it this time, it hit different. And all of a sudden, me saying that Barack Obama chose to say black, even though his black father wasn't there, like, I'm fine with that. I don't care. I'm saying, you're not going to criticize him. Why are you criticizing me? You do you. If you want to, we happen to be okay right now, it seems, if kids want to identify as a cat. So like, the identity thing kind of cracks me up. Like, you can say you're a biological girl, but you can say you're a boy tomorrow and a cat on Thursday. Like,
and that's okay.
Which one is it? Right.
And that's okay, but you can't identify as who you were actually made by.
Your own truth.
Yeah, and that's where I was. But I didn't fully realize that. I guess in 2021, I hadn't thought about it. It hadn't affected me per se. But when I said that, along with the Disney comment. Whoa. And that's when I've been canceled a couple times before, but that's when the real cancellation began, not just from, my peers and social media, but from my bosses.
Wow. What right does so you can't trash your employer, basically. That's really what it comes down to. Do they have a right to control our
how is it
mouthpiece?
Even trashing her employer? She just said, I was forced to get it, and I don't think it's right. That's not trashing.
I mean, there's a corporate narrative, that they get to decide who we are, what is our image in the world, and anybody steps out of line and speaks against that, pops the bubble of our corporate narrative. That's no good. And is that the basis of the termination?
Yeah. Well, there was no termination. I wasn't fired. Everyone thinks that, and I understand why, because that's what some want the narrative to be, like the people who canceled. I sued Disney and ESPN and settled out of court. So, let me tell you that coming to that decision, that process, I don't know that I've ever been more scared. I mean, you talk about David versus Goliath. Me, one person, one woman, single mom of 3. When I say single, their father is very much in their lives, but the financial aspect was 100% on me.
Wow.
So I'm doing that alone. And it's just me versus Disney. That's how strongly I felt about this after being suspended, pulled off the air, made to publicly apologize, and then having assignments taken away from me. It's one thing if, I do the apology, you take me off the air, I come back to work, you scared the crap out of me, fine, onward. No, but it was supposed to be over after that, but they kept taking assignments. And that's when I said, wait a minute. Not only are you taking assignments from me after you said that I would be good if I apologize and we move on, make it go away. The worst part was that they allowed my peers to speak up. Because why? Because those peers of mine fell into line with the Disney, ESPN, woke, liberal narrative.
Here's the question for you. Who's writing your story? You or some random dude on the internet? If you're sick of Google, gossip blogs, or that one angry ex controlling how the world sees you, it's time to do something about it. Erase.com helps you take back your narrative by removing harmful content, outdated info, and straight-up lies from search engines. Your past shouldn't be a permanent headline. Erase.com gives you the reset button that the internet forgot to include. So don't let the web define you. Go to erase.com, use code ERASED for 10% off, and start owning your story today. Links in the description. Click it. Your future self will thank you.
So, while I was on a podcast on a day off, clarifying that these are just my opinions. I'm not representing the company. This is my personal experience, why I choose to say biracial, why I was upset over the shot but complied. On a separate podcast, my peers were going on ESPN airwaves, live national TV, radio podcasts, and talking about us crazy anti-vaxxers, allegedly, and how sick we were, or going on an NBA show and being emotional and tearful over Roe versus Wade being overturned on an NBA basketball show, or the alleged "Don't Say Gay" bill in the state of Florida. And if anyone used their eyes to actually read that alleged bill, they'd see that those words "Don't Say Gay" weren't even in the bill, but they could say that, their opinion about that, on live national TV broadcasts on ESPN airwaves, and they were fine. So to me, that was where I said, absolutely not. Either all of us get to speak or none of us, but to silence me and punish me publicly, as I will say, at that time, their longest tenured female sports anchor.
Wow.
I was our highest paid woman at the network, like 16 plus years. Because my opinions didn't fall into line with theirs, then I'm in trouble. And that's when I called an attorney, who's incredible, a dear friend of mine, Brian Friedman, who also was Megyn Kelly's attorney. He also was Chris Harrison's attorney, the former Bachelor host, who was also canceled. Tucker Carlson's current attorney.
Wow.
He is an incredible, strong human being. He'd had some fights with ABC and Disney before.
That's when I called him on our show.
He's amazing, and he's like, young lady, you've been wronged here. And as far as your point, David, about employers and silencing you, they do have a right to do that. Private employers can do what they want. Will there be repercussions? Potentially, yes. Here's the key. We realize that there's a statute in the state of Connecticut, and it's a rare statute. I don't know how many other states have it. A rare statute that says that you can absolutely criticize your employer if you're complying with their rules. So I had no idea when I did it. None of this was the plan.
Wow.
But when you have good representation, they say, wait a minute, check this out.
Wow.
And I was within my rights, unbeknownst to me. I just knew that I was allowed to have an opinion if I was complying. Like, I knew that.
Yeah.
And wasn't trying to criticize the company. I held back. I mean, let me tell you, I held back. But when my peers were allowed to do that, and I was punished and silenced, I'm like, absolutely not. And that's where it began. And it took, from the moment I was suspended, which was early October 21, to the day we settled and I left ESPN, was 22 months.
Wow.
And it was a really long time. And so from the moment the lawsuit was filed, was like April of 22. And so it was 16 months of an active lawsuit against your bosses, against Disney, but still going on the air to host your national TV show every single day.
Did you go to the office every day? Were you working remotely?
No, you can't do remote when you host SportsCenter. If you've seen it, it's a very highly produced, active show, highlights, graphics.
Wait, hold on. So the lawsuit was going on, and every day you had to look at these people in the eyes?
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that.
Actually, it is. Like, it was every day.
I love that.
Scary, and I was like anxious and really nervous to go in there every single day. But the coolest thing, the day that I was going back from my suspension, my parents had driven up from where they lived in Pennsylvania and to be with me, because I'd also gotten really, really, really sick with COVID after getting the shot that was supposed to prevent me.
Oh, God.
It was awesome. While I was suspended, like, it all happened at the same time. It was insane. So I was getting canceled. Everybody hated me.
She gotten boosted.
He's just
right. Everybody hated me, death threats, all the things, for speaking up about a vaccine I didn't want that was allegedly going to protect me from getting it, and then I got it while getting canceled. So my parents drove up to be with me, and I'm so grateful for those days. My dad was undergoing chemotherapy at the time. Should never have been around me. This is 4 years ago almost. With COVID, we didn't know as much, but that's what parents do when their kid is hurting, right? No matter how old their kid is. And so that day when I was going back to work, I was scared to death because I'd been told by my bosses that everybody hated me. Not everybody, but that a lot of people hated me. And I have apologies to give, and it's going to be tense, and just stay silent and go to work, head down. And so my dad, former football player and coach, he did the whole, okay, girls, huddle up. And it was me and my best friend, who was also my makeup artist, my mom, huddle up, and we said a prayer. And from that day on, every single day that I drove into work for 22 months, I got in the parking lot and I would call my parents and we'd say that exact same prayer.
Wow.
St. Michael the Archangel. And I know for a fact that I was protected. And I prayed every day that I was able to kind of put a bubble around myself and not allow those negative feelings that people were throwing at me to kind of penetrate the bubble, so I could go and do the job that I love. Because no matter what, I loved my job. And I actually can look back, I did my best work during those 22 months of fear.
Wow.
I think I was protected. It was very much God. And it was also every day I got a little stronger, where I was like, okay, literally Bob Iger, the head of Disney, is probably watching me on his TV screen because he has all the TVs in his offices, right? And throwing daggers at me, and I can't speak for him. It's just what was in my head. And I'm while I'm suing his butt, but I'm still on his TV screen. Yeah. And so I realized, I'm okay, you can do this and still do the highlights to the best of my abilities and be a good teammate and do good interviews. And so I look back really fondly, actually, on the toughest time of my life.
Yeah.
So you were very polarizing during this period in front of a lot of people, your coworkers, your friends, your family. Did you lose or gain anybody along the way? Did friends that are gone forever because of the positions that you took?
A lot. So about that, but what do they say about friendships? Have a season. Relationships quite often have a season. You hope that they're forever, but then you hit tough times and you learn the hard way, I guess. People, one woman in particular that I loved, who I really allowed into my life as well, with my kids and personally, and then with her, when she was going through some things at the network, and she was younger, so I always wanted to be kind of a mentor, or at least a good friend to some of the younger women who came in, because I know how hard it is to start there as a woman at ESPN. I mean, back when I did, at least. And she was going through a lot of things and would kind of rely on me for advice and guidance. And then I'd give it because I never had that person. So I was happy to help and hopefully help other women avoid the crap that I kind of experienced. And so when she didn't even really turn, she just went silent. And then I would hear through other people things that she said, not publicly, but privately to them. And that one was really hard. A couple of others who are still there, they're all still at the network on air. I saw one of them on TV yesterday because I don't watch. I really don't. When you know so much, it's easier not to watch. And there are so many other ways to get your sports news now. You don't have to. It used to be appointment television. You used to have to watch SportsCenter to figure out what happened in the game the night before. That was, back in my college days. And it is no longer appointment television. It is no longer the product of quality-wise that it once was. So I don't need it anymore. I have my phone. I can go on other platforms to figure out what happened and get good, if not better, analysis at times. I don't have to watch, but every once in a while, if I see it on and I see somebody, I'm like, ugh, I miss them. But I'm so glad that I know.
Yeah, now you know who your friends are. Something similar happened to us. We owned a school. And I was very vocal about actually not wanting. I did the opposite. I did not want my teachers to get the vaccine. Fortunately, I was connected to a lot of doctors who they would call conspiracy theorists, who told me everything I needed to know about the vaccine. So I was trying to not just protect the teachers, I was trying to protect the kids, right? And I figured, what's the big deal? All the other schools are literally firing tens and thousands of teachers for not wanting to get the shot. Okay, you don't want to get the shot, you're fired. That's what the other schools are doing. Yeah. And I did the opposite. And they came and they just...
As a private school, allowed to do what we want, policies, whatever you want.
But they just tried to completely annihilate us. Completely. How is it that all these other people can have a voice and say what they want, but when you go against what they want to do, all of a sudden you're out, including the federal government tried to come after us, mind you. And I'm telling the federal government, wait a minute, why aren't you going after all those employees who fired people? Because they don't want to inject an experiment into their body.
Exactly.
You know, so what I want to understand, let's go behind the scenes a little bit more, right? Disney, of course, super left, super woke, all the things that we know about Disney, and you're probably not allowed to comment on that, but it's how I feel.
Yeah, no, I agree. I can say whatever I want.
Okay, good, good. And it's just, to me, it's baffling. As you said, sports should be sports, okay? They're okay with pushing this left-wing propaganda on their show. They're saying it on the show. They're talking about it on ESPN, right? You're saying something outside in an interview, very simple opinion, saying something that's extremely factual, and yet you're suspended, you're ostracized, you're forced to say this apology.
Yeah.
And even after this apology, we're still going to punish you. We're going to continue to punish you while your peers can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
I want to understand more how that felt to your core. Obviously, you were pissed, which is why you filed a lawsuit, and I admire you for it, because the more people who can stand up the way you did, the less this insanity is going to happen.
Yeah.
So I want to know more about what you feel, and then.
Well, I was hurt. I think I was more hurt, and then got angry. But I was able to separate it again because I had to still go to work every day with a lot of those people, and so it was a crazy time. It was very confusing, and I just felt like, oh my gosh, I've been a model employee for you for all these years. I guess when this began, I'd been there for 14 years. For all these years, I mean, I was the person that you put in front of the big groups of people and for marketing purposes, charities, etc. I was their go-to girl, and I was so honored. It's like, wait, just because my opinion's a little different, now I'm not worthy of helping you raise money for cancer? Or just to be there to uplift girls who want to be a sportscaster or boys or anything, to be part of Special Olympics. Like, now I'm out. Like, this, it just didn't make sense. Yeah. So it was, and then I was so embarrassed. They want you to be embarrassed. That's what the apology was, the forced apology, which I said, trust me, there was a lot of negotiation back and forth on the wording. Every little word mattered. I regret agreeing to that. I do, but they got me when I was afraid. They're smart. And it was like, oh my, they knew my personal situation. They knew that I loved my job. And they knew that people were going to come after me because of where we were as a country at that time. And the fear mongering that had happened on all levels, but especially with the vaccine. So the anger did eventually come to the surface. And especially when I saw others kind of being treated the same way. And I'm like, this is wrong. And there's another prayer that my dad had us kids memorize when we were young. He went to West Point, and part of the cadet prayer at West Point is something that he made us memorize, and I've learned to follow in every aspect of my life. And
Will you share it?
Yeah, it goes, help me to choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong, and never to be content with a half truth when the whole can be won.
Wow.
So, half truth, whole truth. I knew that only a fraction of the truth was out there. And I did at one point feel like it was my job to tell the whole truth about what's happening at ESPN and Disney. And even today, and the ability, the way that I'm still able to do this is strategic. I'll say that. But the harder right, I mean, it was the harder right to stand up and take on this behemoth of a company. It would have been easier and maybe smarter and certainly cheaper for me to stay silent. That's what they wanted. And coolest thing to come out of it, the coolest thing, the night before the lawsuit dropped in late April of 22, I knew it was going to be ugly, right? Like who sues Disney and who sues their company while they're still working there, especially in such a public facing role. And I wanted all of my kids to understand what was about to come, because in the past, anything I'd said had been blown up, and they would hear it from teachers or coaches or other parents or friends who see something on TikTok that isn't certainly the whole truth. So I just needed my kids to know what was going to happen and to buckle up. And so I spoke to each one of them separately. My oldest, Quinn, she was a freshman in college. Nicholas was a senior in high school, and my youngest daughter, Evan, was a sophomore in high school. And I was like, guys, this is what's coming, and I just want you to know you don't have to defend me. Like, I know it's hard for you, and I'm sorry for what's probably to come. If someone goes at you, just say, diversity of thought. My mom believes and leads with diversity of thought. And I don't always agree with my mom, but she has a right to her own opinion. And that usually silences people, usually the sane ones. And so when I told each kid separately what was going to happen and told them that, my son, who's the quieter one in the middle of these two psycho daughters of mine, he's such a saint and very opinionated too, but just more observant, and then waits to say what he feels, where a lot of us women just go bleh. Yeah. He looked at me and I was crying. I was in his bedroom and I was crying. I was like, I'm sorry, it's going to be ugly, buddy, but I cannot be quiet anymore. My son looked at me and said, Mom, it's about time you stood up for yourself. Aww. So for all the people out there listening who question, should I stand up? Should I say something? What effect will it have on the people in my life, the people that I love, my kids? I will never forget that moment. And my jaw dropped and I cried harder because I realized the whole time I'd been silent, mainly to try to protect my kids, to try to protect them from having to feel any pushback or ugliness because their mom's big mouth. So all these years I got quieter and quieter and quieter until I couldn't do it anymore. And my son saw it. He saw me making myself smaller. Wow. So what was I teaching them? That when the going gets tough, just get quiet and run away? I was mortified then that I'd waited so long.
We both got chills over here.
I have chills every time I put myself back in his bedroom that late night, the night before it hit. And I knew at that moment, you guys, that no matter what happened, if Disney crushed me and bled me dry, which it came close, because who can compete against that? Not one single human. But I knew that even if I lost, that I won. Because my kids, this is where my kids saw that I stood up. My kids saw that I was no longer going to be quiet and be bullied by these people. And my prayer from that moment on was, maybe my kids will be better and stronger than me and not wait till they're almost 50 years old at that time to say enough and to stand up for themselves in a professional, kind way. We don't have to be screaming and yelling and going to the levels of other people, but just know your boundaries and don't let people dictate what you do in your own best interest and the best interest of your kids. So I was telling my kids, preaching, be strong, be tough, stand up for yourself, stand up for others. And what was I modeling? The opposite until that day.
Wow. Well, Charlie Kirk was on here. He said, courage is when you take action and you really don't know what the outcome is going to be. Super scary place to be, but if you've been in this situation of being canceled, you have to. That's the recurring theme of.
But you know what? I agree with Charlie. I talked about this with Charlie recently. It is courage. More importantly than courage, it's faith. Yeah. That's where it is, because faith to me is a belief that you will be okay going forward no matter which way that path leads you. I don't know what this next step is going to do for me, what's going to happen, but I have faith that I'm going to be okay. And so it's faith, number one, to me, followed closely with courage. But I don't have the courage if I don't have a belief. For me, if I don't believe in God.
Yeah, faith is a big part of our lives as well. And we realized there's no accidents in life. Everything
Yeah.
is unfolding exactly the way it's supposed to be for whatever purpose that might even be beyond our comprehension. And we just have to stay in flow and just stand in our truth and do what feels right. And there are no mistakes.
Remember that our kids are watching and our neighbors, some of them who hate us, but I bet you too have inspired other people. I can't imagine how grateful some of the teachers in your school were for your stance because they were afraid. And when they see you risking it all for them, I betcha, I know you changed some of their lives and gave them the courage to stand up and help other people.
Well, in a nutshell, I'll share the story.
But we also had other schools literally reaching out to me saying,
true.
because you did what you did, I'm going to follow, and I am going to not, I'm going to go against the government trying to make me mandate my teachers, and I'm not going to mandate them.
Yeah. She basically, there was a leaked Zoom where she strongly encouraged teachers, if you have to get it, just wait until the summer starts, which is literally only 6 weeks away. And it took on a life of its own, went to the White House, went global. Media was camped out every single day trying to speak to disgruntled parents. And a lot of the parents left, a lot of the teachers left, they ran for the hills. But all this negative attention got us people from all over the world that moved to Miami specifically just to go to our school because they knew there was no other school for them.
Yeah.
I wish I had known about you then.
It was scary though. We were on our rabbis and our spiritual advisors and meditating. It was like super intense. Yeah. And the media interviews that we did, we learned very quickly. They really were trying to set us up and make us look really bad. And so we started to take interviews only and write questions in writing beforehand. It was really nutty. It was a first for us.
Even Fox, they were not nice. I'm trying to share my. They're owned by Disney too, right?
No, they're not.
No.
They're separate. But Fox mandated the vaccine for their in-studio employees too.
Yeah. No, they were not nice. So, what do you think is happening on the inside, right? So, is it pharma that's controlling, Disney because of all their paid advertisements? What is happening that they've made it a very clear line where it's okay to be left, but if you even dare speak your mind about the right, give us some insight.
I want to add to that. Yeah, same thing. I had a similar question. You were at Disney ESPN for so long that you must have seen a cultural shift. How did it happen? How was it gradual? Was it always there and you never noticed? I mean, you were there for a long time.
Start with mine first.
Well, it's sort of the same question in a way.
Yeah, I didn't realize the shift until after, and then you go, what is going on, Layla? Like, why is this happening? But unfortunately for me, it was very much in hindsight. So, I first started to see some things I didn't love during the Obama administration, and just the forcing Obamacare down our throats without reading the bill and allowing people to ask questions, and I was like, that's weird, but okay. Whatever, like there's only so many things I can control, and I have a job. And when I started at ESPN in 2007, so right before that election, my kids were 11 months old, 2 and 4. Wow. And I'm working a morning show on national TV, pressure, stress, exhaustion, like I didn't have time, and then time went on, and then I saw more divisiveness that was brought on, in my opinion, during the Obama administration. And then the 2016 election came. And that's where all hell broke loose, where I saw executives who previously told all of us employees at ESPN, don't tweet, stay out of politics, don't say anything. And then all of a sudden on election night, some of the highest ranking employees at our company were like going crazy and, oh my gosh, Donald Trump saying terrible things and, just all vocal about why Hillary is getting screwed with this whole thing. And it was like how scared they were. What is going on? These are our leaders who told us not to say a word, who are on Twitter. What the hell is, I had no, so then it was just confusing. And then Trump is in and you just, next. I didn't know what to expect. I just knew I didn't want her. Like, if you actually do homework, it makes sense as to why those of us who voted for Trump in 2016 did versus her. Sometimes it was just because, in spite of her, whatever it takes, it was the right decision. And then 2020 hit with COVID and then George Floyd. And I really saw that. I saw how much they gave up as far as leadership and allowed all of the on-air people to say whatever they wanted when they wanted. Of course, it was only one-sided. And then I asked why, like, what is this? And I remember listening to a podcast in 2020 when we lived in Connecticut, so my kids were shut down from school, and you're all on the Zooms and Google Meets for them to try to go to school as kids, and no sports, and everything's terrible and shut down. I remember one night up late, again, I'd just gotten divorced when all this happened too, so it's kind of a crazy time. Remember up late mopping floors, like cleaning floors. Whenever I got stressed, I would clean. So my house was really, really clean for a few years. And I remember just listening to the podcast about the money, the financial aspect of it. And so, I remember a hospital in Orlando and this is Florida at the beginning.
Yeah.
But people at Mayo Clinic there, in Minneapolis, were, people come in with a head injury from a car accident or a heart attack, but they're diagnosed as a COVID death. Mm-hmm. If they had COVID, even though that's not why they died, because why? They were getting paid $40,000 per patient, approximately. Yeah. And so I'm like, wait, what? And then I started to go, well, what do you mean they're getting paid to list the death as a COVID death, even if they died from cancer? Yeah. And so once you hear that, and this is probably April or May of 2020, immediately I was like, oh, hell no, something's going on. Yeah. And then Big Pharma, Fauci, there's never going to be any accountability for it. Fauci now admits that he made up the 6-foot rule. And I'm like, there's no accountability for how much this devastated so many people, kids, teenagers. The suicide rate's going way up. Those of you who say you care about the suicide rates, how about the suicide rates of Black kids that skyrocketed? Look at what's happened since then with the trans ideology and things like that. Like, it's gone through the roof because all people had was social media, and there's evil people on there trying to take our kids' souls, and they're succeeding in some ways. And so I do believe it is all related to the almighty dollar and the finances that are involved with Big Pharma in every aspect. Now, if you go to, one of my favorite places to shop is CVS. I love CVS. I find everything I need at CVS. And the whole time on the loudspeakers, what? The new booster for COVID-19 is here. Make your appointment now with Happy Voices. And it's like, because every single time someone at a CVS puts a shot, or Walgreens, or any of them puts a shot in anyone's arm for COVID, they get paid however much it is, $10 per shot per person, times how many per day? Yeah. Tens of thousands, if not more. It's all about the money. And the gullible people who accept what they say is the norm now. I just refuse. And deep down, I know a lot of people, most people agree with that, but they are afraid to say it, or they're already bought and paid for. And it's so, so sad.
How do you think the leadership of ESPN and Disney got so aligned ideologically? Do you have a theory on that? Like, was it a
people want to survive? People want to survive. The leaders at the top are making a lot of money. And there's also clout that comes with working there. You are getting to hobnob with some of the biggest, brightest stars, athletes in the world, especially if you're at the top of the food chain there. And you've got a ton of stock options. And everybody knows that company, There's a handful of companies that are just global and been around forever and seemingly untouchable. Disney's taken some hits, though, over the last several years. And it's really been interesting to see, because it's just not necessary. Like, why, when you go to Disney World, couldn't Mickey Mouse continue to say, hi, boys and girls? Like, Mickey Mouse doesn't say that anymore. I don't even know what it is, but it's friends, maybe. You can't say boys and girls. Like, what? What's wrong? What's so bad about that? I don't know, but I believe in my heart, because I know some of these executives. I'm like, there's no way in hell they actually believe this, but they're bought and paid for. Life is too good, and the status that comes with saying you work at a certain place exists. I do want to make one thing clear. I mean it when I say I wouldn't change a thing. And I'm not bitter. Like, I am so grateful. I shudder at the thought of where I would be as a human being, as a mother, as a woman, had I stayed quiet and done what they asked me to do. Yeah. Apologize and shut up and go away. And by the way, making incredible money. Like, life would have been easier if I stayed with that. They probably wouldn't have renewed me for my next contract after my words, but it makes me sick to think the what if. So I can criticize and actually hope and pray that they choose to turn things around, because there's so many good people left there, and there's so much good. They're brilliant. Their minds are brilliant at Disney and at ESPN. And what a waste. And you've seen what's happened at the box office with Disney, right, for the last several years, because people have said enough. I just want to take my kid to watch Snow White because that was something I watched when I was a little girl. And they have chosen to ruin it. The only way is people can try to slow that down is what? If we don't go, if we don't buy the product. And that's what's happened with ESPN and Disney. And I think they're starting to get it. They're stubborn. So let's see. This is our job as consumers now. If we don't like it, you can't participate, and that's hard for some people.
It sounds to me like, and this is another common theme, strengthen your soul. By you going through this leveled you up as a human being. This took you from here to here. And then your kids are watching you. You're the role model, right? And after your son saying to you what he said, I mean, I loved that you said it. It just felt like basically I had already won, because your number one job is being a mom.
Yeah. What a blessing that God chose me and many others, you guys, so many, to fight back and stand up for people who can't or who are afraid to. It doesn't say that we haven't been afraid. I'm sure you guys have too. I mean, just for your well-being and to be able to establish and achieve your own dreams that come with some financial freedom, and to eventually retire and spend like things that almost all human beings want, right? But I don't know. I'm so grateful that I saw it before it was too late. And I know, you know how many people I have come up to me in airports, restaurants, golf courses, like in the sports world. I'd been there for so long that I was certainly recognized a lot if you like sports in that little world. Mm-hmm. I cannot describe since then what has happened. For something that was deemed as so negative and ugly and devastating, certainly, and costly. Yeah. The number of people, grown men, who will come up to me, this happened twice in one day, in tears, saying, I'm so scared to speak up for my daughter in sports, who should not have to compete against boys. Thank you for what you're doing. Another man was just like, thank you for having the strength, because as a guy, we have different expectations, but as a girl, you're a role model. Like, I end up crying because I never had any idea. I was doing this just because I'd been devastated by their decisions. Yeah. And so that was for me and my own survival and my own pride and my own heart. Yeah. I had no idea it would affect so many people. Yeah. That is such an overwhelming blessing that has come from what I thought was the end of my career as I knew it. I guess it was the end of that career. Yeah.
But beginning of an even better.
Oh my gosh, beginning of so much more. And the freedom to be here with you on a Tuesday, to be able to talk when I want to, not when not asking permission. Hey, can I talk to the Erased podcast? And of course I would have said no. But in general, later today, I
would have said no.
Right, yeah. I get to go move my daughter into her first apartment after graduating from college and getting a job. I get to be there for my mother and father as they built up this 100-year-old Spanish colonial down in Florida and did this beautiful garden. I got to be there to help with the garden tour in the middle of the week. You know what I mean? Like, I get to do things that are so important to me that I never thought I'd ever be able to do because of this job, this box I was living in. It was a nice box. It was a beautiful box. It was a comfortable box in many ways. But now look, I have control, even though it's scary to start your own business. I always thought I'd work for a network my whole life and just keep making a lot of money and doing what I wanted. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to run my own business. I hate it. I hate having to learn about the behind the scenes. It's scary. YouTube, all the things. I'm like, oh my God. But I'm learning, I can do this, and I can have a good team with me and uplift them too and help other people too. Like, so many blessings have come from the attempted erasure.
You know what's interesting? We were talking to Charlie Kirk about Queen Esther.
Oh my gosh, we talked about that too. And I'm walking and talking to unlock a door. Keep going.
No worries.
This is how I live.
Your story is also very, resembles the Queen Esther story. Of course, hers was literally like she could have been executed, killed, right? But, a lot of times when you're thinking about you might lose your job, it almost feels like death, It's the same thing. Like she could have had everything taken away. And instead, her standing up, of course, saved her people. But then even afterwards, now all of a sudden, she's this powerful queen who is inspiring others and being an incredible role model. Had she just sat down and been quiet and not said a peep, she would not have been able to impact, save the lives, the millions of lives, but also be an incredible role model and a powerful figure that she became after that moment that she actually spoke up and did something.
It makes me uncomfortable sometimes because people have brought that up, and it's just humbling because it's not what I set out to do or what you set out to do. You're just standing up for yourself. And I literally, I can say this honestly, I now know exactly why God has me on this earth. It is to be a mother to those three crazies, three beautiful human beings, and it's to speak up and use my voice. Yeah. Which, if you ask my parents, I was the shyest, quietest kid. And I had this crazy dream of being a sportscaster. And I had to change in order to achieve it because I was so shy and nervous. And so my parents, sometimes they joke, they're like, what happened? My God, shut up. It's like you're freaking about, because it has affected them greatly. To see the hatred, to see the death threats, to see people threaten to rape my daughters because of my I think no matter what, again, as a parent, doesn't matter how old your child is, you want to protect them. You don't want them hurt. And they saw that in every way. So I have some guilt because I know I put them through a lot just by speaking up. But now, who's more proud of me than my mom and dad? And that's all that matters. I was able on my show, Sage Steele Show, thank you.
Anything you'd like to plug, just go for it.
That's it.
I've seen I've seen some of your podcasts.
And we'll put your podcast link in our show notes as well.
Thank you. But yes. I only bring it up because I got to sit down with my mom and dad. Mm-hmm. I interviewed my parents. And sobbing halfway through it, I got to do that. And that would never have happened had I, number one, stayed quiet during all the chaos from a couple of years ago, or had I not had those great parents to push me out of my comfort zone when I was a really, really shy kid who had this crazy dream. There's just so much good that can come from being uncomfortable. Nick Saban, the former Alabama head coach, the greatest coach of all time in college football, the key to greatness, the key to success, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah. And I'm like, woo, I'm really good at being uncomfortable now. And I wouldn't change it. I always say that to people, whether I'm speaking at a college or university, anywhere, anyone who'll listen. I'm like, gosh, if every time that I pushed through being uncomfortable, I realized, wow, I'm still here the next day. I woke up and to live to see another day. And you realize, oh, I can do hard things because I survived the last one. So what are we waiting for? And the fact that life is going too fast. How am I 52 years old? I feel so immature, so young, so energetic, with so much to do. And I feel like I have time to make up for because it took me too long in my own eyes, too long to get to this point where we can have this conversation and I cannot care if someone doesn't like me. Man, we got to teach our kids to get there a lot sooner.
It's so inspirational, and also thankfully we live in this country, the greatest country on earth, because you can't necessarily speak up in other places in the world. So we're very fortunate to be here.
And that's part of our hope for this show. Our show is highlighting courageous, amazing people like you who went through the storm, and in every situation coming out of the storm has made them stronger. And they've learned life lessons. And you know what? The next battle that might come around the corner is not going to be as hard.
That's right.
In fact, they tried to cancel us 3 times back to back. And the second one, was not nearly as hard as the first one, and the third one was like, oh, this
For
is
her.
easy.
Third one was more
Bring
about me.
it on.
And it was my first real rodeo, and the first two were her.
I was like,
but now
I
we
love
can
it,
handle
but you
anything.
got to do that together. I really
yeah.
love that. And as painful as it is to see someone that you love have to endure it, like you knew, David, that you were going to get through it because you saw your wife do it. And then vice versa, you pull strength off of each other. I mean, I think that was the one thing, because I just gotten divorced and I was very alone, literally and figuratively in that way. Certainly made to feel alone at work and all that. And it was, intentional by many. And then, I don't know, I'm grateful for it because that's where my faith went to another level, because I did it alone. And now I know that I never
technically weren't alone. You weren't alone. God was right by your side the whole time. And that's
the
what
thing. I know that I never was alone. I
That's
just
right.
had to turn my way of thinking, because when it's dark and the entire world is caving in on you, and sponsorships and the financial aspect that was lost as well. People can't. I had contracts with people to speak at their events or to host an event, and they just canceled them. And I could have fought back and said, "Well, I signed it, so you still have to pay me." And I let it go. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed, because they did a good job of making me feel that way, and I allowed it. And so now I'm like, go for it. You're not gonna do it to me a second time, that's for sure. And can I be cheesy? I'm no longer alone in the physical way either. I met the man of my dreams who it's all God. It's such a wonderful story. Our mothers have known each other for 32 years, and we never knew each other ourselves. We ran into each other at an event and like, wait, what? You're who? And so I'm grateful that I see you two together and your relationship. It's obvious. And I'm like, and Dave always says to me, because he knows everything, and he followed my story before we even met, just because our mothers knew each other, so he knew who I was and watched sports. And one of the most beautiful things he's ever said to me is, he's like, I watched from afar when you did this alone, and I didn't know you were alone. He said, but now I know everything. He goes, you will never, ever have to do anything like that alone again. Hopefully I don't have to go through that again, but if I do, I know I can get through it because I already have. And it's really cool when you realize on all levels, right? Yeah. Our reason, what we have in common, is that we are here to stand up for others who have felt alone, who have felt afraid, who have been canceled and ostracized. And so that's my goal with speaking up in general. Yeah.
Can we say exclusively on Erase that Sage Steele is in love?
Sure.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. I like it.
I put it out there on my Instagram. The second it's definitely the most likes I've had. And it was crazy to see. It's also a reminder there's so much more good than bad out there.
Yeah.
There's so many more good, normal people who just want to live their own lives. And it's okay to disagree, but so many people love seeing others succeed and rebound, and love seeing love in every way. And that's what we do need to focus on. Yes, our stories and sharing them so others don't feel alone, can stand up for themselves in whatever way, but also because there is a lot more good. It's just the media focuses on the opposite. And I think our job is also to highlight the positive aspects that can come from negative situations.
Yeah, and the more people fight back, the more people stand up, this will happen less and less. My hope is that ESPN learns something from what they went through with you, and that they do make changes for other people that are there, so no one else has to experience that, because it's not right.
I hope so too. I am not holding my breath for the ESPN Disneys of the world, but I will say, that was my other goal for standing up. Yes, for my kids, for myself, for my kids, but so corporations realize, you know what, it's just not necessary. It's just not necessary to do this to crush your people, because what you're actually doing is saying, I don't know, approximately half of the country, you don't care if they buy your products. Like, that's just bad business. stupid. Why would you draw a line in the sand?
Yeah.
It's so mind-boggling to me. So that was my hope, is that corporations say, no, if we do this, there's going to be people like Sage who fight back and who win, you know?
So one final question. I know that you've said in the past that people are a little weak. You know, maybe you've alluded to it here before. The people are afraid to speak up because they're making money. They're going to rub elbows with famous people. What would you say to those people to help them like grow a set or something, to speak in their truth?
I've said that a lot. Grow up hair. Yeah. Honestly, to each his own. I really do believe that. My time came later than I would have wanted. And maybe there are people along the way who are frustrated with me for being quiet. I don't know. But I will say, the longer you wait, the more you regret it. And then you're going to look back and say, damn, what took me so long? However, if you choose to stay quiet, then you can't complain. People who refuse to vote or educate themselves on the candidates and the issues, and then the wrong person gets in and then they bitch and moan about it. I'm like, no, you can't have it both ways. Like, did you do anything to help get your person elected? That's what I got in trouble for this 2 years ago, when people were kneeling for the national anthem after Donald Trump's first victory in 2016, and then the NFL and NBA and all these people, and a couple of them, they're kneeling and they're so upset and they didn't even vote. I'm like, shut up. Like, your opinion means nothing to me, because you didn't even try to educate yourself and to better not just your family, but your community, especially when many of these people have such massive platforms. So the one area where I'm not nice is with this women's sports issue, and where women who claim to be feminists and men as well, that whole woke world, and they choose to be silent on this most basic of issues, which is not political, which is not partisan. Almost 90% of Americans polled agree that men and boys should not be in women and girls sports. This is not this is not rocket science. This is actually just regular old science, where we know that the differences between boys and girls and men and women. So what are we doing? And that's the one part where I say shame on so many people, men and women, who choose to preach but don't practice it when it's the most basic. It doesn't mean that there's not a place for trans people. Absolutely not. But don't fight for 52 years for Title IX and remain silent at the most important time now. That's where I'm impatient. That's where I am beyond disappointed in so many people, many of whom I know, who have chosen to stay silent. Because I always say, if just a group of us got together, like female broadcasters, sportscasters, we cover this stuff. Or how about former NFL athletes who know damn well there's not a woman defensive tackle who's going to be able to come and compete. There's a reason it's only going one direction, that men are invading women's sports, not the other way around.
Right.
It's
exactly.
So obvious and basic. If one of these groups or a couple of these groups would get together, it's easier because you realize you're not alone. But this crap would have never even gotten to this point. But too many weak people, women and men, are choosing to stay silent. And now girls are suffering. So that's the only place where I'm like, no.
And the thing is, too, is that you're claimed to be a feminist, not you, but these feminists, and then they're okay with watching a beautiful young lady have her head bashed in by a man who's saying that they're a girl. I mean, it's dangerous. It's downright dangerous.
Somebody's going to get hurt.
They've been getting hurt. Yeah. They've been getting hurt. And it's heartbreaking that so many people, they've sold their soul. That's it. That's all. They've sold their soul for $1. And you know what? You know, it's sad, but I'm hopeful one day. I had this vision that, you know, in a particular sport, you know, that all the women would just sit down while she is trying to play, just all together in unison, sit down and say, you want that guy to play against us? We are all sitting down. None of us are playing. How quick do you think this would be over if that happened?
I think so. But what I will say is it shouldn't be up to them to do it. It should be up to especially with these high school girls and stuff, the adults in the room who know that there are differences, and they're putting these women and girls in tough places, and they're 16, 17, 18, and they're the ones that are being told to do, you know, to push through it, whatever. But for the vast majority of kids, their last real competitive sports action is going to be in high school, not college. And so if this is their last chance at the state swimming championships or track and field or whatever it is, and this is their last shot, their whole life, they know this is it. And then they're going to step aside.
Yeah.
Like, I understand why they don't. It breaks my heart. This is their last shot.
Yeah.
So that's why shame on the people who are allowing them to be put in the position.
Yes.
And that's why I love what President Trump is doing. And I don't know how it's going to play out exactly, but the crushing fines he plans to drop on the state of California.
Yeah.
Good. That, because they're being such idiots with it and allowing girls' spots to be taken by boys.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the president has to step in, and unfortunately, sometimes it seems, no matter the topic, that the only way to get people to listen is if you hit them in the pocket, and that's what's going to happen. And I'm glad.
I'm glad to.
So clearly, cancellation is still alive and well, and anybody who suggests otherwise is not. Their eyes are not open. A little girl who's been trying to pursue her sport forever, and she's top of her game, and then she's in fourth place because one of the top three is taken by some transgender athlete. It's just so wholly unfair.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so many other ways people incorrectly called out in a Me Too accusation. They come in all different flavors. So,
Yeah.
Sage Steele, thank you so much for being on our show. Really appreciate you. Thanks for sharing your story, and we wish you the best of luck. God makes no mistakes, and your future is bright as ever, bigger and more abundant than ever. That's our prayer for you.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You so much.
Okay.
Thank you, and thank you for what you all are doing.
Sure.
I mean,
Thank you.
I'm so glad that you guys got canceled a few years ago, because now look.
Thank you.